This video is sponsored by Skillshare. In today's video, I'm going to be repairing this bench. Now, this has lived in my tattoo shop for several years. At the last bunny fundraiser, which you may have seen in another video, this got broken. I heard a huge crack. Someone sat on it and just twisted the wrong way, and this side didn't break off, but it cracked and it loosened up. I'm finally getting around to repairing it. There are some finish issues, some structural issues, and of course Nacho is going to be weighing in on this as well, so stay tuned. My name is Angie and I refinish furniture. Sometimes I paint and sometimes I don't, but I always do what I can to save old pieces from the trash. Welcome to my workroom. So I bought this bench back in 2015 when I opened my first tattoo shop on my own. It has seen a lot of bottoms since then, and I actually bought this secondhand from the Habitat for Humanity restore, so who knows what kind of life it had before me. Aside from the legs having issues, there are some finish issues. There's a large crack that runs pretty good length along the top. These square dowels in the round holes, it kills me, but it is what it is. This is not an expensive piece, it's not rare, and it's not old. This is from Wicker Emporium originally, I'm 100% certain, but there's some issues. This side goes far beyond just having loose bolts. There's something broken in here and I need to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to disassemble it. So you can see that this joint has failed, it's loose. I'm pretty sure there are screws in here, so I'm just going to pop these out, and there's no real good way to do this without gouging the soft pine around it. That's fine, this piece is full of gouges, I'm pretty sure it's reclaimed wood, so I'm not too worried about extra gouges. The majority of this piece is actually held together with screws, and you can see along the underside here all of the segments are also screwed into place, and I think that's probably what contributed to the warpage. It's a little hard to see on camera, but the seat itself has warped over time, which makes one leg appear to be shorter than the other. So all I did previously was just stick a felt pad there to level it up. But to be honest, there's not much I can do about the warpage without literally taking this entire piece apart, remilling it and putting it back together. And that's not happening. I have been trying to get out of tattooing for about the last 5 years, and I'm almost at the end. So I just need this to hold on for a little bit longer. And then what I'll probably end up doing with it is disassembling it and repurposing the wood. When you have pieces put together like this with wood glue and lots of screws, it doesn't always allow the wood to expand and contract with humidity. So what happens in the summer is the wood wants to swell, but because everything is clamped down, it can't, and that's why you get cracking and warping. And there's really not much I can do about this with this piece because it's just how it was made. Thankfully, the end pieces are labeled, so I have no issues about forgetting where things go. But now I'm going to take this apart. It actually slid out fairly easy on one side, a little bit more difficult on the other side, but you can see now how poorly this was actually put together. It's not so much that the joint itself is bad in theory, but in practice they just didn't do a very good job. There are a couple little slivers that I'll have to re-glue here. And you can see that where they put the wood inserts in, they didn't drill the holes in a very good spot. So on this one, they actually attempted to put a wood dowel in to, I don't know, help hold the insert in. It's really bad. And they basically did the same thing on the other side. And what's frustrating about this is that Wicker Emporium is generally not that cheap in terms of cost. But it's just been my experience that the quality of the builds are just not very good. For now, I'm just going to glue this dowel back in, and we'll see how sturdy I can make this by just fixing up the rest of it. I feel like this bench is past its prime, and like I said before, all I'm really trying to do is just extend the life long enough to finish up my tattooing, and then I can repurpose the wood again. So I get to the other end and I'm about to undo the bolts, and then I realize there are no bolts. And someone has instead put 3 wood screws in to hold it, so I'm guessing there were probably issues with the inserts breaking out on this side as well, but I'll know more once I take these out. Sliding this back, and yep, you can see the tear out here around the inserts, and they did the same thing on this end where they try to put a dowel in to correct the fact that the holes are in the wrong spot. Now, the actual inserts are completely missing on this side. So all I'm going to do is just try to put the chunks of wood back where they were, and I'm actually going to be drilling new holes on this side and putting new inserts in the hopes that I can eke a couple more months or even a year out of this bench. So I just want to show you again how tightly these braces are attached, and they're glued to the bottom and they're also screwed in, and again, this is why I think this warped and cracked. Each brace has 3 screws going down and then 2 screws on the side, and it's also glued. So this board here can't move, it can't expand and contract with the seasons. So again, it's just an example of a fairly poor design. And I considered stripping this old finish off. This is a pine piece and it's not stained. Basically, they used a tinted lacquer on top of it. And the reason I opted not to strip is because there's so many little holes and gouges and character marks, as well as the holes where the dowels go into. I don't want to deal with getting stripper out of all of those holes, so I'm opting to just go in with an 80 grit sand pad. This is solid wood, so I don't have to worry about sanding through veneer or anything like that. And even though it's going to take quite a bit longer than stripping or scraping it, it's, I think, the way to go in this case. Now on this side, and this is the side that was more damaged than the other, you can see that this brace has come apart from the glue blocks, and you can actually move it, so we don't want that. I'm going to remove the screws and reseat this. I'm trying to pry this up as carefully as possible, but you can see there's a little stress crack forming here on the bottom, and it is inevitable that it is going to crack, but that's okay because I'll be gluing this right back down. Now, were I building this bench from scratch, I would not be gluing this in place the same way that I'm going to here. The only reason I'm doing it is because that's the way it was made, and without a lot of modification, it's really my only option here. It's actually kind of funny because the whole time that I'm doing this, I'm going back and forth in my mind about what I want to do with this. I considered doing a whitewash, I considered doing another dark finish like it already had, I thought about putting a tinted Odie's oil on it, and I just couldn't make up my mind. So once I had finished sanding, I actually just let it sit in the garage for about 2 days until I could figure out exactly what I wanted to do. For this joinery on the legs, I'm going to be using hide glue, which needs to be warmed up, so I just have this sitting in a little cup of warm water. Once it's ready, I'm going to apply it to the joint. The reason I'm opting to use hide glue here versus normal wood glue, which you see me use all the time, is that I may need to take this joint apart again at some point. Hide glue is a lot easier to reverse, so that is why I'm opting to use it here. These aren't the best made joints to begin with, but I'm trying to make the best of it. I'll be using some clamps to tighten everything together, and then I will set both leg assemblies aside and get to work with my next round of sanding on the main piece. So like I said earlier, I started with an 80 grit, then I moved up to 120, then I did 150 and finished with 180. One thing I like to do on pine specifically is use a carpenter's pencil to make some marks. This allows me to ensure that each time I run a different grit of sandpaper that I'm doing a flat, consistent job. You can immediately see where you missed. You just don't want to push down too hard so that the pencil indents the wood. Pine is very soft, so when you start with a grit as low as 80 on pine, it's often a little bit harder to get all of the scratches out from the sandpaper. So where I might be inclined to skip grits a little bit higher on hardwood, I definitely can't do that with softwood, so it is a process. Hey everybody, this is Angie from Transcend Furniture Gallery. I am super camera shy. That is the main reason you haven't seen me yet, but I'm going to try to branch out a little bit more and push myself a bit. It's kind of funny now looking back at those first few videos because I was super shy. I found this class called Confidence for Creatives, 5 exercises to grow your confidence and self-care, with emphasis for me on the self-care part. This is by Eugenia Washington, and she tries to give you exercises and practices that help you discover and connect with your natural confidence. And one of these exercises is to make yourself a playlist to dance to. I am not a dancer, but I did do some swaying with Nacho, and I love music, so this was a fun one for me. It's really important for me to continue to discover my own voice amongst thousands of other voices. Careers in a creative industry are not one size fits all. And Skillshare can help you design your career by focusing on you first. Once you find your own voice and style, Skillshare has hundreds of career-focused classes too. Right now, the first 1,000 people to click on the link below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare where you can check out this class and so many other amazing classes. I love clicking onto Skillshare and seeing that "What do you want to learn today" box. Now that everything is sanded, I need to address this crack. I really don't think this is going to move any further, so I'm opting to use some wood filler in it as well as some of the knots. I use a couple of different types of wood filler, but the Timbermate is probably my favorite. It doesn't tend to shrink like some of the other wood fillers I've tried in the past, and I find they stain up a little bit easier than some of the others as well. Now that everything is patched and sanded and smoothed, so smooth, I can start putting this back together. For the side that was missing the bolts, I have to drill new holes and add new wood inserts. This isn't difficult, but it's not exactly easy either. First, I made sure to clamp this in place, And because of that divider there in the middle where the clamp is attached, I can't drill perfectly level through the board. I have to go on a bit of an angle. When you're putting inserts in, you want to make sure that the drill bit you use is only as wide as the inner portion of the insert, not the outer threads. You can use a bolt with 2 nuts on it to help push this in. There's quite a bit of torque on this, and there is a tool that you can use. I don't have one, so this is sort of a cheat way of doing this. And Andrea actually happened to come home right as I was doing this, so she hopped in and decided to do this part herself. Once the inserts were in, I could go ahead and bolt this on. Now this is a scrap of pine. This is what pine looks like after about a year with a clear coat on it. I hate yellow pine, and I don't like it when it goes orange either. So I'm going to show you what this would look like with some toners. I used a couple of different colors here from Mohawk to sort of build a tinted finish. And with toner, you do not want to do thick coats. You want to build it slowly, layer by layer, very thin layers. And normally you can tweak it as you go along if you need to add more cool tones or more warm tones. I wanted to get this sort of reddish brown, similar to what it was before. And this doesn't have the actual lacquer on top of it, but this is roughly what it would look like. And this is what it would look like with a stain. This is kind of a weathered gray stain. I don't love either of those, so what I decided to do was try to make an Odie's pigmented oil to use on it instead. If you've been following my channel for a while, you've seen me make these stains, but I'll just quickly go over what I use. I use the Odie Safer Solvent, the Odie Super Duper Everlasting Oil, and then whatever pigment I choose to use. I have a few samples left over from other projects that I'm going to add in, and I'm just going to use this empty Odie's jar. I'm going to add my Super Duper Everlasting Oil, and I added a splash of the Safer Solvent as well, and then tried to get out the remaining bit from those little testers. Now it seemed quite dark already, so I opted to skip the black and go right into the buffalo brown, and there's no real measurement here, just kind of eyeballing it. Give it a good stir and a shake, and then I'm going to go back to my little tester piece and see if I like the results. These are the Merck & Merlon pads that I use. These are 1500 grit. I really like applying the Odie's oil with this. With the Odie's, you don't want to apply too much. Number one, it would be a waste, and number two, it can make it very hard to remove the oil, so less is more when it comes to the Odie's. Putting it on with these gray pads or white pads makes it so much easier to apply just enough. And you can see when I wipe this back that it is a lot warmer than the stain, and this is more the look that I'm going for, so I'm going to move forward. Pine is an extremely porous wood, and in most cases when I'm using Odie's oil, I only need 1 or 2 coats at the most. And when I'm dealing with Odie's on pine, I usually go back and do 2 or 3 coats. I always make sure to stop every few minutes and give the jar a shake or a stir just to make sure everything is still distributed well. You'll actually see when I get to the top here that by the time I finish one end and get to the other, the first end has already sort of completely soaked in. So I'll just go back in and do another coat. I ended up doing 3 coats in total, I do believe, on this. I love this warm weather tone this wood has now. I do believe Nacho approves. I'm not sure how else to interpret his sniffing and then walking away. As I was letting the Odies dry, I took myself out for a little jaunt in the woods. We used to live on an old logging access road, and I really love coming down here in the winter with the Jeep. It's about a 40-minute drive, and I don't think I've ever seen another car. Little interludes like this is part of my self-prescribed self-care for this year. And as much as I love doing furniture, sometimes it's nice to just take a quick break. I use these Mohawk brush tip markers to touch up some of the areas where the original wood filler was. Theirs was white. You can see the wood filler that I used next to it that stained up beautifully with the Odies, but whatever they used did not, so I just used some markers to help blend it in. Looking back at this beat up, sad little bench, I'm really glad I opted to go the way I did with the new finish. And while ideally some of these structural issues would have been repaired, it's a bit like trying to completely remodel a car on a bent chassis. It wasn't constructed very well to begin with. Like I said, I only need this for probably another few months, and then plan to repurpose the wood for another project anyway. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time.